Okay, so welcome to this session. I'm Susie Vishwanathan, Product Manager at VMware. I am going to be covering quite a lot of ground here. So I'm going to be starting with the relationship VMware has with AWS, what we have accomplished so far, and then I'm going to definitely spend a lot of time talking about Outposts and what the two variants are and how we differ with each. But in the middle, I have something really excited to share with you all. I do have this enterprising customer of ours, Freddie Mac, who will come join me on stage in the middle and actually share their journey to the cloud, to AWS using VMware. And it'll be a very engaging session. I'm well aware that it's an afternoon session, so we will keep it quite engaging. I would love to finish this off 10 minutes to the hour so that I can then open it out for questions. Okay, so with that, let's get started. All right, so before I actually delve into the details, a quick information gathering from the audience. How many of you here are VMC customers? Okay, a few. How many of you are VMware customers but not VMC? Excellent, then I don't have to go into a lot of details. Perfect. All right, let me talk a little bit about what is going on between VMware and AWS. You must have heard about it at several VMworlds, at reInvent, and Andy Jassy set the stage this morning as well. So it basically stemmed from the fact that we really want to bring two big companies together. Why? This is one question I do get asked quite a bit. VMware has definitely become the de facto on data center virtualization. AWS, I don't have to say much. So it just seemed like a natural extension to combine them both. But the goal is very clear here. We want to give the on-premise VMware services in the cloud. And it will be quite evident as I keep speaking about that. So what is it that we actually did with it? Okay, so you would see 5 clean advantages here. So basically what this is saying is bringing together the juggernauts of on-premise services and the cloud services. Okay, so what does that mean? So for us, we are bringing together to give one joint engineered solution for you to be able to migrate your workloads to AWS. Now, many of you are actually have gone through the migration or maybe considering a cloud strategy. And many of you actually, when I talk to you, say that we are embracing a cloud strategy because we were told to. So those are some of the reasons that I actually hear from you as to why this joint solution will work for you. But let's actually talk a little bit about how we achieved this. So if you look at these 5 pillars here, it talks about offering as a service. We are all familiar with that, right? We are talking about consistent operating model. So this is very key when you're talking about VMware Cloud and AWS, because many of you raised your hand when I asked if you're a vSphere customer today. So you're familiar with vSphere, you're familiar with vCenter, with vSAN, NSX, all the foundational pieces of VMware, right? So we want to be able to give you the same services on the cloud as well. Why? Mainly because if you're reluctant to migrate to the cloud, this familiarity and the assurance that you will get the same experience will make you migrate workloads to the AWS when you want to. We are talking about integrating services. So if you look at VMware Cloud on AWS, how have we integrated with AWS? So here we are talking about one key component, which is our SDDC, stands for Software Defined Data Center. So it comprises of 4 main capabilities: the familiar vSphere, our software defined storage, which is vSAN, networking aspects NSX, and vCenter. So this forms the SDDC part of it, okay? And what we do is we allow you to deploy the SDDC in the AWS region. And when you do that, you can continue to use the AWS EC2 services. I want to spend some time on this slide mainly because this is very key for you to understand how that fits into Outposts. So that is what we mean by integrated. So for those of you who are not a VMC customer, which is, since it's 90% of this audience, the main idea there is you will be familiar with the aspect that you're now running all of this in the cloud. However, if you are using, say, vCenter services, you will continue to use that. If you're using any other add-on, say vRealize operations or VRNI, then those things will continue to work as well in the AWS region, okay? Now, and finally, any application. This is another key aspect for you to connect the dots with AWS Outposts as well. So why do people embrace VMC or AWS? So I don't know if you had paid attention to the theme at Andy Jassy's keynote. There's a lot of focus this year and going to extend into next year, primarily on analytics, AI, ML, anything related to data science. They are not just buzzwords. What they really are is, for those of you who are in that space, you are either having to refactor your old application or you're going to have to rewrite a new one from the beginning. That is where that fifth benefit comes into play. So if you are someone who are not going to move into the cloud, into AWS at all, you're an on-premise customer, you will always remain on-premises, which will be the Outpost aspect of it. However, if you do have a requirement to do any kind of development, any new application, I do believe that this bridge with having your data and workloads remaining on VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts and bridging it over to VMware Cloud on AWS will give you that hybrid connectivity and the experience of building new applications. So we believe that these are the fundamental areas that you need to keep in mind for you to be able to choose between Outposts versus VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, having said that, let's take a little closer look into what's under the hood as part of the solution. So I'd already set the stage about the SDDC. I've talked about what SDDC comprises of in terms of components. We talked a little about the same operational consistency, both on premises and in the cloud. But a few things to note here. So you see that one line about on-demand capacity and flexible consumption. So what's so great about that? You get that anyway in AWS, right? So this is where all the managing and monitoring aspects of VMware comes into picture. So your whole solution, when you really want to embrace VMware Cloud on AWS, you get it from VMware. However, you're going to be purchasing it, using it, deploying it, managing it only on an as-needed basis. So let's take a use case. Today, you are an on-premise customer only. You have vSphere running. You're monitoring using vCenter. Tomorrow, let's say after this session, you're so impressed, you're going to go get VMC on AWS. What will change for you? What will change for you is getting to know the concepts of how to run the same thing in an AWS region. And that's it. Everything else in terms of running the same clusters, the same vSAN, NSX, vSphere, and vCenter will be almost the same, either on premises or on AWS. However, when it comes to pricing and packaging, you will be able to use it and go on a pay-as-you-go method, basically. So this is the reason I am setting the stage for this is on-premise customers like you always tend to talk in terms of CapEx, upfront costs. You're buying racks, you're buying servers, it could be boxes, and then you're given a budget for 1 year or 3 years. Right? Now, this is very key for you to understand how AWS VMC on AWS Outposts is going to work, because we are going to combine this method of consumption-based modeling that is there in VMware Cloud on AWS and combine the CapEx model that's on-premise, and we are going to merge that together and offer you a way of having flexibility across the spectrum. Okay? The other aspect here that I want to talk about is the direct access to the native AWS services. So I already mentioned the background behind that. Once you have the entire concept of VMware's SDDC running in AWS, you will be able to subscribe to all the EC2 native services on the cloud in that particular region. A little further into the details of what's comprising the SDDC. Now, this is actually quite key here for us to set the stage on how that's going to work in Outpost land. Okay, so first, let's talk about, I've already explained a lot about the SDDC components. Dynamic capacity. So you have three main options here, and if you're a VMware customer, you're quite familiar with it. DRS and HA, you're familiar with it. It is a load balancer that makes sure that your cluster is well balanced. We take that same concept into VMware Cloud on AWS as well. The difference there, it would be where you wouldn't know which host and which hardware resources are comprising your cluster. In an on-premise, you would know that. The second aspect in a dynamic capacity, so for example, let's say a host fails on-premises. What happens? Your IT admin or somebody in the lab is actually going to go and replace it, right? Now, let's say you move to the cloud environment. You're not going to be involved in replacing the host. VMware has this auto-remediation ability where it will pick the resources from AWS and make sure that the VMs that were part of the failed host are revived. Okay? Now, keep this in mind, and we'll talk about how that fits into on Outposts once we are back into the on-premises world. The third aspect is our vSAN aspect. So, many of you are users of vSAN here. You know how that works in a software-defined storage aspect. Now, we moved that to VMware Cloud on AWS. How did we do that? In an on-premise environment, you have disks. In the cloud, there was a concept, an additional concept that was released earlier this year called Elastic vSAN. And the way Elastic vSAN worked was it actually used diskless host at the back end, but it would combine with the EBS volumes at AWS. Okay, so that is how vSAN was extended over to the cloud aspect. Now, we need to combine the best of these both worlds and bring it back into the Outposts. So if you are with me so far and wondering why I'm talking a lot about VMware Cloud on AWS, these are fundamental concepts that's going to help you understand how Outposts will be deployed and what are the benefits of that is going to be. Okay, then networking concepts. So for networking, we have NSX. We will extend that as the backbone from on-premises to the cloud as well. Today, at VMware Cloud on AWS, the way NSX works is you will be able to either use VPN to connect to the region, or you can use Direct Connect. That is also going to be a key component when it comes to VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts. Talking about hybrid cloud extension. This is going to be a key feature when it comes to VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts, because today, HCX hybrid cloud extension, this is going to be the main tool for migration. We offer two tools there, two main options actually. HCX bulk migration, where you can actually do a lift and a shift. And if you're moving your entire DC, so there are customers who say they are no longer on premises at all, and they are fully in the cloud, they can use HCX bulk migration. The second option is the vMotion aspect, which many of you are familiar with. If you have select workloads that you want to move to the cloud, but 95% of your workloads will remain on premises, then I'm pretty sure you can already connect the dots. You can deploy VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts on premises, use HCX vMotion to migrate some of the workloads to the AWS region. And the key theme behind all of this, as you've guessed already, is this unified management and the same experience both on premises and in the cloud. Okay? So these are some of the nuances and details that you probably are aware of, but you need to remember when it comes to the Outpost aspect as well. Okay, now I did talk about additional add-ons that you will benefit from in the VMware Cloud on AWS, be it on-premises or in the cloud. The first and foremost here is the vRealize Ops. So actually, I have seen vRealize Ops when it was at its infancy in VMware, and it's come a long ways, I must admit. And if you look at it, at VMworld, they had a major announcement, which is vRealize Ops for the cloud. So it is beyond just packaging what is there in on-premises, actually. So look at the 5 items here. So first and foremost, what does vRealize Ops actually do? So it is going to do performance optimization, monitor capacity, and configuration for the SDDC that's running in AWS. That is key. But how does it tie all of this together? It will give the same unified visibility whether you're running on premises or on the cloud. Now, if you're still wondering why is she constantly talking about being in the cloud, that I'm going to tie all of that together when we talk about the Outpost pieces, okay? Then we are going to actually look at the 5th point, which is flexible deployment. This is also paving the way for you to run the same vRealize operations for cloud, on-premises, and in an AWS region as well. You'll have the same, not just the same experience, even the way you do the add-on as part of the SDDC. It is actually a SDDC proxy that runs in the VPC. And even the deployment is going to be quite simple. The second add-on that you probably want to consider, whether you are on-premises or on the cloud, is the VRNI, which stands for vRealize Network Insight. So we talked about the overall performance, capacity, configuration management with vRealize Ops. The Network Insight, as the name indicates, is for giving you insights into the network connections. So this is where you're going to discover your connectivity, monitor the traffic between on-premises and the cloud. You're going to get logs out of vRealize Network Insights as well. And it will also give you tips on how to troubleshoot and optimize your network. Okay, so this is the second aspect that will probably come handy, you would probably want when you're embracing VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts or VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, the third is the troubleshooting part. Now, we offered you the network visibility. We offered you, pardon me. The network visibility. The second aspect is the security aspects of it. So it's not enough that you have a highly reliable connection between the on-premise cluster and the AWS cluster. This is one of the biggest areas where many customers stop or have second thoughts about deploying anything AWS, which is the security aspects. And I will delve a lot more deeper into how we are ensuring that your connection is going to be fully secure from the on-premise rack to the AWS region. Okay, so that is one thing. If you tie that together with the vRealize Network Insight, you will be able to get the full end-to-end insights into the, starting from the on-premises connection, ending at the SDDC running in AWS, and then the troubleshooting. So we will give a lot of logs, alerts, and events that will be captured for you to be able to monitor and also glean information on how your traffic is doing, how your network connection is set up, okay? Of course, that leads us into the third aspect, which is the log analytics. So log analytics, so this is where we capture almost all the logs, not just from vCenter. So for those of you who are just a vSphere customer, are probably using logs from vCenter. When you're talking about VMware Cloud on AWS, it's not just vCenter logs. You will need logs from AWS as well. So that is where we bring all of that together. And not only that, We collect, we analyze the logs. We will also integrate it with any of your monitoring system. Many of you will use Splunk, or you're using any other third-party tools. We will be able to siphon off those logs over to that. And you can use any of the monitoring tools that you are familiar with. Not only that, the logs that comes from vRealize Insight that we just saw on the previous step will also feed into the log analytics for VMware Cloud on AWS. And last but not the least, you can bring your own logs as well to be fed into the log analytics part. So just to summarize why these are really important from an Outpost perspective. You are an on-premise customer. You will always have workloads on-premise. Maybe you are looking into moving to AWS. You will not need to learn new skill sets when it comes to VMware at all. It is the same familiar concepts. The things that you will need to understand are the network connectivity, the secure aspect with which you're setting the network connectivity, what Outpost will bring into the picture, the benefits of just the combination of VMware and AWS, and how you want to stitch together the base core functionality with all these add-ons. Okay? So so far, these were the fundamental foundational basis for the technical aspects of it. Now let's talk about what it means for your business, right? So VMware Cloud on AWS will be there at every global region where AWS is. Recently, we announced availability in Spain when we had VMworld Barcelona. We have announced Sydney and I believe Stockholm as well. So this is always going to keep growing. What does it mean for Outposts? We will be there globally as well. Wherever AWS is, we will be there. Of course, we may not start with all those regions on day 0, but we will start with global regions across all the 3 geos. Okay? Okay, so we talked about the fundamental technical aspects and feature components of VMware Cloud on AWS. We talked about where we are present. How are we doing? We have been in business for 2+ years now. So these are the main customer use cases where we are seeing a lot of traction. So if you are hesitant to embrace VMware Cloud on AWS, if you don't know if you have a use case, if you don't know if AWS or VMware together is the right solution for you, here are some guidelines into how we have had success stories, right? So the data center extension, I have been directly and indirectly focusing on data center extension, talking about on-premises and deploying in the cloud, right? That is the biggest use case that we see so far, and the momentum is growing, okay? A moment of truth here. There are very few early adopters who actually will migrate all of their data center to the cloud. The reason they do that is they have already seen the benefits of going no data center and everything to the cloud. They have workloads that fit primarily in AWS. There's a larger camp who will keep bulk of the workloads on premises and choose to move select workloads to the cloud. And that is where I'm going to say that Outpost is going to have a sweet spot right there that is going to enable you. It's going to be a stepping stone for you to actually make the jump to the cloud. Cloud migrations actually need to focus a little bit on disaster recovery. There doesn't go by a single customer conversation where DR does not come up. Many of you have DR today. You're looking for an even more efficient, cost-effective solution. Many customers don't have a DR. They have backup. Backup and DR are not the same. They have backup. And depends on the verticals. Health, financial, if I were to go one vertical by other, the way these solutions have been adopted vary. But this is one thing where DR, where the target is the cloud, has definitely emerged as the winner there, right? And then I'm going to talk about next generation applications. Again, the theme from an AWS perspective is going to be AI ML. It's going to be how you build notebooks to generate the next data modeling for your data scientist and all of that. So this will again be, we are starting to see as a major use case for customers who start with a virtual environment on premises and then move to the cloud to do their application and then bring it back on premises, okay? So these are guidelines. I'm not saying they are limited to just these 4 use cases, but this is where we are seeing a lot of traction for VMware Cloud on AWS. These are a few examples of the customer success story that we have had so far. Again, not limited. We are having a lot of logos that appear in our webpage. Feel free to go and take a look at them. Now, a little bit about the packaging structure. This is something that I did want to share real quick here. So if you look at this, how do you get started on just VMware Cloud on AWS? It is entirely on a subscription model. We offer 1 year and 3 year. Keep that in mind. I'm going to address that from an Outpost perspective as well. Okay, and remember I mentioned you will always purchase this from VMware. Okay, and you will get the core 4 components of our SDDC, and in addition to that, you can take and choose whatever vSphere services you have and add it on to this. Okay, all right. Consumption models. Okay, already covered the 1 and 3 year. You do have options of having an on-demand hourly model if you choose to. These are for customers who will primarily remain on premises, who are either doing development on AWS or have select requirements to move some workloads to the cloud and bring it back. For them, this is an excellent option to do an on-demand hourly model. Okay? Payment methods. So you can choose any of the consumption-based billing on the left-hand side, or you can use credits from us. We will offer you credits. We will take care of the relationship behind your back with AWS, and you can get started. It's as simple as that. The hybrid loyalty program, which will apply to most of you here, you're already using licenses on vSphere. We will not ask you to move it over. You will just continue to use that, which is a huge enabler that we have seen with customers. Okay, so you have all those options. Let's not forget the partner ecosystem. That ecosystem is growing, and it will continue to grow, especially now that we started off with on-premises, moved to the cloud, and we are coming back to the on-premises. This entire ecosystem is going to play a critical, vital role because many of you have so much data on other third-party vendors lying on premises. How do we tie all of this in? So we have a really good story around that line. Now, I walked you through the journey about the partnership with VMware and AWS. I gave the functional, technical background. I talked about the business model of use cases and where we are connecting more with many of you, and then how you can purchase this if you're interested in. Now, you would want to hear it from a successful customer, so I'm going to invite the enterprising Daniel Mock onto stage here. And he's going to share the journey he's doing with us, with you all. Okay. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, thank you. I am Daniel Mock. My current title is Solution Engineer, although I am being upgraded to Platform Architect fairly soon. So I'll have a much broader role over VMC and AWS going forward. What is Freddie Mac? Freddie Mac and our sister company, Fannie Mae, are primarily responsible for providing liquidity in the secondary mortgage market. Now, what does that mean? It means we don't give you a loan, we don't show you houses, we don't, take you around the neighborhood. What we do, we let the banks do that to you. You buy a loan from them, they invest their money in your house, and if they kept investing it, they would run out of money to lend because all their money is from depositors. So what they do is they take your mortgage, sell it to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, we package it into securities, bundle them up, sell them to Wall Street, to investors, a nice 30-year rate of return on them, and then we give that money back to the bank so the bank can sell you another mortgage, to sell someone else another mortgage. Reason why that's important is without the secondary mortgage market, the banks would run out of money. You couldn't get a loan. You would have a situation like, a classic Christmas movie that should be coming out pretty soon. You'll see every night on TV where the bank runs out of money, a run on the bank, and all pandemonium breaks out. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. With that said, we have a whole wide variety of systems. And the reason why I mentioned all that is just to give you an idea of the diversity of our environments. Our front-end systems are the things that interact with your loan officers. So when you go there, you fill out 10,000 pages of paperwork, your histories, the properties, so, all that stuff. We have systems that actually will tell within 10 to 15 seconds if you're approved for a mortgage. You want to know right on the spot. Then once your mortgage goes through, Freddie has to help, and Fannie, facilitate transferring those loans through the right systems, get them registered, get money sent to the federal government, transfers to investors. So we have systems, like really quick front-end systems. We have a lot of batch systems that process all these loans at night. You would not believe our quarterly batch jobs, and of course the year-end. We have systems that transfer billions and billions of dollars back and forth to the Fed. When they want their money, it has to be there. They don't accept a 10-minute delay. We have systems that if somebody doesn't perform on the loan, we have systems that will go out there and say, hey, let's work something out for you. Can you, do you have a job that you're lining up? Is there some way to remediate your loan, get you back on track? So there's agents all across the country that are trying to figure out how this stuff works, how to keep your loan good standing. So we have a wide variety of systems, quick systems, long batch systems, analytics up the wazoo, for lack of a better term.
Share a little bit about what the business goal for Freddie Mac is concerning VMware, AWS.
Right, so our primary driver was we had a new CIO who had in her lifetime experienced losing 2 data centers. And she decided that for a financial company, running a data center is not a skill, is not a competitive advantage that we should have. Why should we spend all this time maintaining a data center? And she decided that we're going to make that cloud journey. Now, we originally started looking at just an on-prem SDDC. We wanted to explore SDNs. We worked on that. Then she said, nope, stop it. We're going to the cloud, and you have a year to do it. So we have 12,000 VMs run across our environment, mostly Linux and Windows. Yeah. We do have a strong physical footprint as well.
So what actually drove the choice of VMC on AWS? You could have
right, so what actually drove the choice is we had a bake-off. So we brought in VMware, we brought in AWS, we set up environments, probably most of our complicated development environments with load balancers and firewalls, DMZs, the hardest use case we could find. Brought in and did a bake-off. Now, the biggest thing that VMware does for you is you don't have to modify your applications. Okay, the biggest thing that AWS, the biggest problem on the AWS side was to actually re-IP your VMs, move your firewalls, do a whole bunch of work. And our partners at Freddie do not want to rewrite their applications. They hate changing IP addresses on us. And it actually was almost too easy to fit. I spent more time fixing the AWS version of the application to put it back as normal, push some buttons, and the application moved to the cloud, and we no problems. Yeah. And so after the bake-off, VMC was decided as the winning solution.
Yeah, so you mentioned you've migrated 1,500 VMs?
So production right now. So our goal was to have 80% of our virtual footprint migrate to the cloud. Okay. It actually was on our scorecard, so we made 90% so far, so I'll get my bonus.
Freddie Mac is using the HCX bulk migration, I believe.
Yeah, so we've migrated over 1,500 production VMs. We migrated over 7,000 non-prod VMs. We've migrated over 800 highly available environment VMs. We have a very substantial footprint out in VMC right now.
So where are you headed next? Are you doing a total DCE back? Or is on-premises and Outpost something that you will consider?
So I think we might skip. Why don't you talk? What kind of things we do?
Yeah.
So I do want to hit on that point. You see HCX on your slides a lot. That is your godsend. Okay, that will migrate your VMs. That will stretch your networks. That will basically make your life very easy. And as I started thinking about this talk, I actually done a similar one at VMworld, And I had to realize how many things have changed, how responsive VMware was to our needs, the technical needs we had, the migration needs we had, and they've gone through so many adaptations. It was kind of hard to think about. If I told you what we did, you don't have to do that anymore. It's that much easier now. I saw William here, so we gave him grief earlier. One of the biggest things was the APIs and PowerShell. We're a big PowerShell shop. There's so many things we automated that it's almost, we don't even think about it anymore. We have migrations going on 3 times a week. I don't even get called about it anymore. We have a SharePoint, sucks up the data, they schedule it, pushes a few buttons, and it just happens. We don't have to worry about it. Of course, we do tests. We make sure the VMs came up okay. We did opt to use bulk migration. So there's 2 choices. There was the vMotion, which moved them over live, which I thought was cool. What bulk migration did for us, it allows us, kind of runs like SRM. It makes it clone it out in the cloud, keeps it up to sync with you, and when you tell it time to cut over, it will cut over. Our management wanted to have a copy on-prem. They wanted to get out of the cloud as fast as they got into the cloud if something went wrong. So that way, we can do a smoke test on the weekend, business can start up on Monday. If there's any problems, we can immediately turn it off and turn it back on-prem. That was another big win for VMC. We'd have to re-IP the VMs. We'd have to redo all the firewalls for them. I mean, it gave our customers who are very picky a real warm fuzzy that we could get them back on-prem as fast as we got them into the cloud.
It sounds that it was a major undertaking. What about skill sets? What did you have to do in order to embrace this?
Right, so it was a major undertaking. I don't want to belittle that at all. 90% of the work was done by 3 people. So it actually did not consume a lot of our staff. We actually brought in a new operations team to backfill some of our existing ops who became engineers. Because we still have an on-prem, we still have a colo presence, we still have work to do in that space that may or may not go to Outpost. But skills-wise, I mean, we just picked people off the streets. We knew VMware. They filled in the normal day-to-day operations. The skills that we picked up to do the migration, quite honestly, in 6 months, we won't have to worry about that anymore. What we did get to do, though, is do other things in the VMware space. I mean, how many of you like to do patches on the weekends? If you said yes, I was going to throw you out the door right now, okay? We don't do patches. We don't get woken up for hardware going down anymore. We can actually focus on the business, what the business needs, getting them environments faster, get them quicker, get them more reliable. We don't do a lot of that grunt work that was fine when we were all younger and starting the business. I don't want to run cables anymore. I don't want to have to replace GBICs. I don't want to, troubleshoot that stuff. I don't get woken up anymore. A server goes down, I don't get called. VMware gets called, and it's back there before I even know it's gone. So from a new skill perspective, we picked up things like VRNI, and I kind of admitted that in the planning stage. VRNI was another godsend. It tells you what talks to what. If you think you know your environment, you're mistaken. You really don't know it. There are so many pieces that you just don't understand or talk with each other. And it was very important for how we laid out our SDDCs in VMC, how we put apps together that they did not know they talked to each other. So those are skills they learned there. Wavefront is a new tool that we have out now to watch your environment, to monitor your environment. We thought we did a good job monitoring it. We found out that there's a lot of things we really didn't monitor, and now we can actually learn those skills. So we thought we were going to decrease our staff. We've actually added, I think, 8 more people in the VMware space, all learning new tools in VMware. VMware operations, using a lot more of that now than we did before. Used to be just a little monitor on the screen. Now we can do a lot more proactive work on it. Our main monitoring, enterprise monitoring, didn't used to care about us. Now they do, and they're all rolled into it. They're plugged in. They're getting more data than they know what to do with. We actually have learned new skills, and they're not doing these patches anymore.
So what is your parting tips or feedback to the audience?
Feedbacks. So it was very important to engage security early on. So one of the things that we had issues with going native AWS is we have lots of sensitive data. About 70% of the people here in this room who have a mortgage, either Fannie or Freddie, own it. So we have your information already. Don't worry. So it's obviously very critical. If that stuff got out, it'd be bad news. Very bad news, actually. So that was very important to know. The networking, we went from going VPN to direct connects.
Yeah.
We've segmented our replication. We have a major DR footprint out of region that we had to cut over at the same time. Now we're going to DRaaS, completely as DR as a service. We had to make sure we knew how to move those pieces over without interrupting DR at all. Replication had to be going on at all points. We had to bring up our network team up to speed. We're not really on NSX yet. I mean, we use it within VMC. We have some rules in there for some work, but next year we intend to completely roll to a complete SDN environment. There's so many more tools that we don't even have our hands into on the VMware stack that we want to learn.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was very insightful. Big hands. Okay, now let's talk about the second part of this, which is what are we doing beyond VMware Cloud on AWS? So this is where we are going to extend the partnership and all the fundamental foundational pieces that I've been talking about so long, and even things that Dan mentioned. So with Outposts, we are also going to do the same concept of SDDC, the same VMware Cloud's SDDC. But what does it mean from an on-premises perspective? Again, some of the key things for you to remember. We are now going to take all the concepts that's there in VMware Cloud on AWS, the on-demand capacity and consumption-based modeling, and bring it to on-premises. We are going to have the SDDC concept on premises. We are going to have the same global AWS footprint and region presence. What does it mean for on-premises? Okay, so let's talk about Outposts. If you have attended a lot of Outpost sessions, you've already gotten this now. You can attend VMware sessions, you can attend AWS sessions, you will hear the same thing on this because that's what we both are hearing from customers. Anything that will always remain on premises, Outpost is an ideal solution. Why will they remain on premises? Maybe because you want your data to remain next to your app. Maybe you have stringent performance requirements. Maybe because that's how you started and you're familiar with it and you feel warm and fuzzy keeping it on premises. No matter what the reason is, those are the workloads we are going after. VMware knows this business very well. We know how on-premises works. We have been there with you in your data center journey when you did the P2V. We are going to also continue to handhold you on this. Okay? Local data processing applications, I think it's actually, to be very honest, I think it's just an extension and a different way of explaining workloads remaining on premise. But going forward, this is all you're going to hear from both AWS and VMware. Anything remains on premises, you want to consider Outposts. Okay, why? So these are, again, some of the use cases more from a vertical perspective that we are going to focus on. And there is a method to the madness in this slide. Let me pick one. Healthcare and life sciences. Before coming to reInvent, I did a road trip. North America, all health companies. And I was blown away by the amount of data that these guys have on premises. And some of them have embraced latest technology, most of them have not. Outpost gives a leverage for them to not only continue to keep using their patient records, MRI images, even their own employee records on premises, but will allow them to slowly migrate and adopt the newer technologies. What do I mean by that? So if you look at Outposts, what does it give from an AWS perspective? So if you're running workloads in AWS, they have a plethora of services and tools and applications. Andy was talking about running databases on the cloud. Let's say you're using that. We are now talking about bringing those EC2 services that you run in an AWS cloud to on-premises. That's a major undertaking, even for AWS, even for VMware, because now we are talking about tools that recognize REST APIs to be talking on premises. So that is where when you talk to AWS, you will hear things about EKS, EMR, ECS. These are all Kubernetes containers and MapReduce applications. That is much easier to target on premises because those big data apps and anything containers will remain on premises. That's why they're going after that. For VMware, we are going after all these fundamental traditional workloads where they will remain on premises because of various of reasons we saw earlier. Okay, available in 2 variants, native AWS Outposts and VMware. I get a lot of questions as to why there is a VMware variant, and I will address that in the continuing slides here, and hopefully you'll leave with a good idea of why we have a VMware version and an AWS version. Okay, so what is it? So there is a hardware piece and a software piece to it. AWS is building hardware for this. However, they're not building it from scratch. This is the same hardware that runs in the cloud, in their data center. The thing that was hidden is now going to be visible. It is going to be a big industry standard rack. I've seen it myself. I actually was in the lab 2-3 days at a stretch, receiving the rack, plugging it in because I wanted the hands-on experience. And it is a well designed, high density rack that you're going to see. And the software piece will come from us. Now, there are 2 things that you need to keep in mind here. Hardware support, be it starting from the start, whether it's a greenfield deployment or 12 months down the line, you need some help with support, with maintenance, is going to be completely addressed by AWS. Everything software will be fully managed and controlled by VMware. That means, if, to the point that Dan was talking about, who loves doing upgrades and maintenance and patches, we will take care of that on premises now. It is a fully managed SDDC software stack. That is one of the biggest benefits that I hear from customers when I talk to them as to what workloads you will place on Outpost and why and etc. Other than that, all the other fundamental functional pieces that we talked about at the first half of this meeting, which is HA, DRS, the vRealize operations, the VRNI, just vSphere, vCenter, the log analytics, all of that, you can retain them on VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about how this piece will work. This slide should not be new news for you for customers who are using vSphere already. If you look at the VMware Cloud on AWS, that was one of the main reasons why I spent a bunch of time explaining what the SDDC and VMware Cloud on AWS means. Those components will apply here as well, but the hardware comes from AWS. Okay? Let's talk about the network aspect. So, okay, it is good to just talk about major concepts like vSAN, NSX, and vCenter, but what does it mean for the Outpost rack in your network? So this is a very key slide here. So let me walk you through a visualization of how this is going to look like. Day 0, you've ordered an Outpost rack. It has to fit into your data center. And every one of you have so many different requirements on networking. So there are 2 aspects to this. Your Outpost rack should plug into the networking backbone of your data center. It could be data center, it could be your colo. The requirements differ, but it needs to fit into that. The second aspect is there must always be a connectivity to an AWS region. This is key, especially for those of you who are dealing with compliance and any certification regarding FedRAMP or any of those. The connection to an AWS region is a must. It's not an option. Why? Because the management aspect of the SDDC, everything runs on the cloud. We will give you that unified monitoring and management because it runs on the VPC. With that one aspect, you can monitor your SDDC running on Outposts. You can monitor the SDDC running on AWS. You get the same unified management, you get the same unified visibility, and you'll get the same unified experience. That is one of the reasons why we almost have the connection. Now, I had earlier alluded to the fact, let's talk a little bit about the security aspect. So if you look at this slide, there is a subnet right there. So that is what is going to make sure that only 3 parties will ever know of your connection of the Outpost rack to the AWS region. This subnet is going to be an explicit private subnet that you will input in when you order the rack. The AWS console will know of it, VMware console will know of it, your network admin will know of it, and that's it. There are 2 benefits to it. By using the subnet, you can create multi-tenancy internally. So let's say you are a partner instead of a direct customer. You have several customers where you then want to give out as a service. Each customer can be set up with different VPCs and different subnets, and you can have resource isolation that way. Okay? This subnet is also going to be something that you input, so we will not have insights into either changing it, manipulating, none of that. Now, all the other security aspects of vSphere, vSphere, and everything applies, okay? Including data at rest encryption, encryption in transit, all of that. And look at that one other place where it says availability zone. That is where your Outpost SDDC is going to show up. So it will show up as yet another SDDC in that availability zone. So if you're unable to grasp this concept, I will encourage you to stop by the booth. I do have a demo running there that will walk you through the ordering process, establishing the SDDC, and how it shows up at the VMware console. Okay? All right. Connecting to your local network. So these are some of the things that I would love to leave you with, which is we will support BGP and local static routing. So if you're wondering how we are going to connect, this is how we will connect. There is a WIF that is mandatory, which is a public WIF. We will have you establish all of those connections when you are inputting the requirements or ordering an Outpost rack. Okay? Hardware prerequisites, all right. So this is going to be a standard 42U rack. It is not going to come as a shorty or whatever shorter size. It's going to be one single size, a full rack. It will come with 1, 10, 40, and 100 gigabits network connection. You can connect to the AWS region using VPN or direct connect. Okay? Why VMware Cloud for AWS? Now that we have talked about all the prerequisites and the mandatory aspects. Again, by now, I should just sound like a parrot repeating the same thing. We really, really want to address your on-premise workloads, but want to give you the benefit of having a fully managed infrastructure. We want you to get benefits from just paying for what you need and have the same consumption-based modeling on premises as well. And we want you to have the same consistent operating model across both environments. If you choose to remain everything on premise, you can do VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts. If you have a hybrid environment where you have some workloads on the cloud, we will give you HCX to migrate it. If you want to lift and shift everything to the cloud, we have VMware Cloud on AWS as well. All right. Benefits, again, I don't have to talk too much about it. Hopefully, I've built the momentum here, and you've already arrived at many of this yourself. HCX, one point about here. Dan talked about using HCX bulk migration. You can do the same to migrate from your legacy hardware, traditional hardware, over to VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts. Okay? All right, how do you get started? This is going to be 5 easy steps. You don't have to memorize this. This will be an automated workflow in our UX design. I do have the UX design expert here. He will be able to answer more questions outside if needed. We will give you suggestions using the Sizer tool. You will input in your requirements. We'll give you suggestions on what your Outpost rack will be. We will order the Outpost rack based on these instances. VMware will support only metal instances. because we want to run our hypervisor on it, not any other hypervisor. We will also support EBS volumes. EBS volumes is not where you will actually place your data. It is used for management only, but it's something that you will get with the rack as well. AWS installs the rack at your data center or colo. So it is a white glove treatment. The rack will be delivered with 2 people. And they will do and they have done an exemplary job, I have to admit. They come there within 5 hours, everything is plugged and locked and loaded, and they're done. And they will extend that same support later on if a host fails or you need to expand your rack, add more servers, replace servers. Everything is taken care of in the same white glove treatment. You will configure the SDDC by moving over to the VMware console. Okay? And then you will migrate and deploy workloads using HCX. So pretty much this is it. We did announce beta. Now this is a beta by invitation only. Do reach out to your salespeople and set up a meeting with me. I've been in meetings the last 2 days. Happy to walk through more details with you. If you have interest in this, do sign up. There is a form in there. Okay? Hopefully the session was helpful. We do have 4 minutes. Opening it out for questions. And there are mics right on the sides, so feel free to stand up there, and at the top of the hour, we will shift and go out.
If I may, a quick question. How many uplink ports were available on Outposts? 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig, how many ports will be available for connecting networks?
1, 10, 40, and 100.
No, I mean how many ports to connect to networks? It will be 2 ports, 4 ports, 8 ports, 2 ports. And will it be possible to connect servers directly to your switches or not?
Correct. You will have 2 top-of-the-rack switches, yes.
Okay.
Hi. You talked earlier about one of the use cases being refactoring. So if you have native applications that are on-prem today, maybe you want them to be cloud native. How would that look from vCenter? So like meaning, would it be like an AWS serverless architecture?
That's actually, it's not going to be as straightforward as that. First off, let's talk about serverless architecture. You'd have to embrace a Lambda architecture first. Then you have to decide how you want to split your app. That is where most of the customers fail. It has to be a clean stop from one module to the other. And then that Lambda instances will be running on the cloud. The question is, but visible from vCenter. It will be visible from the AWS console. Okay. Yeah. Okay? Any more questions? I'm happy to take one-on-one questions outside as well if you don't want to raise it here. And Dan is here as well. You can ask him more about ReadyMap. Hopefully this was a useful session. Thank you so much.